You know, my best teacher in facilitation hasn't been training or theory, it's been my experience and honestly, my mistakes. And when I look back, so many of them come down to not asking enough follow-up questions when someone shares something that feels off to me. Instead, I jump straight into teaching mode way too quickly. And if I'm really honest, that's usually about me trying to save face or control the situation. It's about trying to make myself look good instead of trying to make the participants look good. And that's not what facilitation is about. In fact, you're not trying to make the participants predominantly learn from you, you're trying to help them learn from each other. So in this video, I'm gonna tell you about one of those tricky moments where I got this wrong and how I'd like to handle it differently if it came up for me today. But first, hi, my name is Maureen, and I'm here to help you design and facilitate sessions that drive engagement and dialogue so that you can lead meaningful change on the issues that matter most to you. All right, so this particular situation happened in a high school classroom. I was working with this school as a freelance facilitator, and I was facilitating dialogues on different social justice issues. I was working with the whole 10th grade, which means that I was leading several of the same sessions with different individual groups of students. On this particular day, we were focusing on the subject of race and racism, and one of the questions that I asked them to think about is, what is your earliest memory of race? So I give the students 5 minutes to reflect and journal about this question, and then I ask the group if anyone would like to share what came up for them. And right away, a student, let's call her Sarah, that is not her name, her hand shoots up and she says, yes, I have a story. And I really didn't get the sense that Sarah was sharing the story to try to provoke reactions, but the story Sarah shared really threw me off. Something that might be important for context here is that Sarah was definitely a popular kid. She had a lot of social capital. Sarah was also from Iran, though she was very white passing. So she explains that she was about 7 at the time when her family moved to France, where this story took place. And the first day of school, she got on the school bus. On the school bus, she sees a Black student for the first time in her life. She's really surprised by this. And so apparently she points at the student and says, hey, look everyone, there's a insert racist slur here. It wasn't the N-word if you're wondering, but it certainly is offensive and absolutely not something that's okay to say. As soon as she says this, everybody in the class gasps and starts to whisper, and laughter just kind of starts to spread in the classroom. She then goes on to say that a teacher pulled her aside on the school bus and told her that this was not a word that she was ever to use again. And when they arrived at school, she was pulled into the principal's office and her parents were called. So she definitely got the sense that she had done something really bad. She even acknowledged this in the class. She did say that in Iran, this is really not a derogatory word to refer to Black people. So she does feel like some of that was lost in translation. By the end of the story, though, there's so much laughter in the classroom that she's also finishing the story laughing herself, and I'm just freaking out. I don't know how to handle it. I realize that Sarah has just shared her answer to the question that I asked, but I've also done this exercise enough times at this point to have heard plenty of stories from students of color that a version of this story happened to them, and that's how they learned about their own race. Someone called them this term on the playground or on the first day of school. So I'm just thinking about how this story would land with some of those students and how it would land to see like a full classroom laughing about it. So my heart is beating fast, and I come down pretty hard on the students, and I tell them that it's unacceptable to laugh at the story, and I tell them that I'd really like to know why they're laughing. So would someone be willing to tell me? Crickets. Unsurprisingly, no one volunteers. And then what I reach for in the moment is to talk to them about the role that humor has in perpetuating racism, that like what we laugh about, we normalize, and what we normalize keeps a culture in place. And in wrapping up that lesson that I just delivered to them, I do thank Sarah for her vulnerability in answering my question, but I also completely sidestepped the story. If I recall, it was like close enough to the end of the session that I could sort of close it all up and dash away. But yeah, that's what I did. All right, lessons. So I think the fatal mistake that I made here is that I didn't harvest the story for any extra insight. In fact, I didn't ask her a single follow-up question. And yeah, thinking about it, that response that I had was really about saving face and making myself look good rather than giving her the opportunity to make sense of that story and come out looking good. In my panic, I really disconnected from Sarah and what she was sharing. And I went to a place where I was like, how do I control the situation? How do I have a response where I don't look stupid, where I don't risk being problematic or furthering harm? How do I come out feeling like a good ally, even if it risks sacrificing the trust within the group and the trust between the group and myself? I needed to ask Sarah more about her story before asking the rest of the group about their reaction to Sarah's story. I could have said something like, "Oh, that sounds like a really hard moment. Did you feel confused, embarrassed, angry, guilty? Can other people relate to that feeling of saying something that you shouldn't say? And who else remembers feeling confused about race when they were a child?" I really wish I had given Sarah a chance to elaborate on how she feels about the story now. I could have asked her, how do you wish the adults had handled it at this time? Like, what was going on in your 7-year-old brain? And in your 16-year-old brain, how do you make sense of that experience? Where did you learn that word? And why did you think it was okay at the time? Then, once she's had the chance to unpack the story and hopefully feels very in control of it, I can help us as a class extrapolate some meaning from it. So maybe it would be appropriate to ask if anybody has been on the receiving end of something like this, and if there's anything that they would like to share. At that point, I can also ask about the laughter and the discomfort that I noticed when she shared the story. A big takeaway for me is that when I ask people for a story, that is a vulnerable ask. And when people share something, I have to honor that story. I have to excavate it for meaning and make sure that they feel like they're in control of making sense of what they're sharing. Because otherwise, why am I asking them to share a story? If there's a point that I want to make, I can just make that point. But if truly the goal is to understand each other better and to learn things that we can only learn by listening to each other's stories, then that's a process that I can't shortcut by inserting myself. When someone shares a story, you have to invest in that story. You can't just take the story to make another point. And I think that there's a lot that we can learn from her story, and that her story is way more relatable, especially to the privileged folks in the room, than we'd like to admit. We were not born knowing these things, and actually the fact that there's so much like hush-hush around these moments keeps us in a state of confusion and a state of misunderstanding about what racism is. So that's it for this video. Let me know what you think. Maybe it brought up some of your own stories that you would like to share. I really wish I had a group of facilitators that I can meet with and we could just like share our mistakes and brainstorm different ways of responding to situations. Hopefully one day, honestly. But in the meantime, this is what I did. Thank you so much for watching, and you should go and watch some of my other videos where I talk about facilitation. Good luck out there if you're an educator. It's a really tough time, and I'm sending all my solidarity to you.